All right, so what we got in this video is I have three other fragrances that I actually purchased along with the Royal Blend Bourbon fragrance that I did a separate video on. So if you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. I want to say I'll probably be posting that video before I actually post this particular video. So definitely, like I said, check that out on the channel here. But what we have in this video is I have the two Ighwa fragrances from French Avenue. So French Avenue's Ighwa as well as Ighwa by Night. So you can see these two here. And then the other fragrance that I have here is called Soir. And obviously with the name Soir, that kind of gives you a hint obviously as to, what this one is interpreting. So let's kind of go over the presentation of these. With the Ighwa fragrances, these come in like really heavy boxes, man. They're large boxes, but they're not very light at all. Like these definitely have some weight and some heft to them. Obviously, you're getting the same design on each one of these, except the only difference is, you're getting like a sort of light brown kind of color on the Ighwa, and then you're getting obviously black and gold sort of color, on the Ighwa by Night. So for both presentations, this is obviously going to apply. You've got the name of the fragrance here on the front. As well as French Avenue at the bottom, Eau de Parfum, 100 mLs for both of these. You've got this kind of gold textured sort of design that goes across the whole front and the sides. And then there's nothing really on like the top or the bottom of the box. This is obviously a sleeve. And then on the back of the sleeve here, you've got French Avenue, the ingredients, authenticity sticker, the production date. The production date on both of these are, so they're a little bit different. So this one was actually produced way back in August of 2024, the Ighwa, and Ighwa by Night I'm showing was produced in October of 2024. So these have been produced for quite a while. I know I did see, before I got these, I just went to see, if any other reviewers have kind of, went over these. And definitely there were several people who had, done videos on at least the Ighwa probably 5 or 6 months ago. So obviously this one was, late to be released, I think here in the United States. But yeah, man, this one is Ighwa and Ighwa by Night. And then, like I said, that's a sleeve. You got Ighwa there on like the front of the box here. And then you got the same thing on the back that's on the sleeve. And for both of these, the box is gonna open up like that. All right, so the fragrance definitely fits pretty snugly into each one of these boxes. And it definitely does take a little bit of effort to get the bottle out of there. So Ighwa, this is Fragrance World's or French Avenue's take on YSL's Tuxedo. All right. So obviously, Fragrance World within their, regular Fragrance World line, they already have done, Fragrance World suits. And then also, I would say probably the most popular, tuxedo interpretation that's out there, obviously, is Maison Alhambra's The Tux. So this one, with it being French Avenue, this one is going to have a little bit more love, in terms of like the ingredients, the oils, stuff like that, the blend quality. And you smell it for sure. And we'll kind of go over that in just a second here. Like I said, the same presentation applies here for Ighwa by Night, except this one is just a black bottle basically. And then for Soir, you have here just the Soir kind of like, broken up like that within the square. This is a eau de parfum. You got the Fragrance World logo on top. On the back here, you've got the authenticity sticker, Fragrance World logo, and then like the ingredients. And then on the bottom, you've got the barcode and the production date. This one was produced way back in June of 2024. So this was another fragrance that I saw that, you know, some other people, mainly who I think lived outside of the United States, had, you know, done reviews on, you know, months ago. So like I said, this is another one that I think was just kind of late, you know, being released here in the United States. And then the bottle on this is actually very nice, man. So this is the bottle for Soir. Just like on the front of the box, you've got Soir kind of written inside of this little square that, you know, kind of bends around the bottle. And really, really nice looking presentation. The cap obviously is a very light plastic, you know, cheap feeling cap. And then in terms of the sprayer is actually, it's a pressurized sprayer. So very nice on that. Now, I'm gonna start off with going over the Ighwa fragrances. And this is just the first impression. So this isn't like a full review or anything like that. You know, I haven't had these fragrances for too long, maybe about a week or so. So like I said, this is just gonna be my first impressions. And as far as like me comparing Ighwa by Night by what it's inspired by, I still have to wait on my sample of that original fragrance. So Ighwa by Night is actually an interpretation of Parfums de Marly's Harriet. And I mean, at least from what I remembered of Harriet, because like I mentioned before in a previous video, it's been quite a while since I've actually smelled Harriet. But this definitely reminds me of what I remembered Harriet smelling like. Absolutely. Like I said, it's been years since I've smelled it, but this definitely took me right back to, you know, what I remembered Harriet smelling like. So just to kind of go over the notes of these two Ighwa fragrances and also comparing the notes of the originals, I'm going to start off with Ighwa. So for the top notes of Ighwa, you get pepper, mandarin, and coriander. In the mid, you get violet, patchouli, cedarwood, and rose. And then in the base, you get amber extreme, leather, musk, vanilla, and moss. Now, comparing the note breakdown of tuxedo. For tuxedo, you get violet leaf, coriander, and bergamot in the opening. In the mid, you get rose, black pepper, lily of the valley. And then in the base, you get patchouli, ambergris, and bourbon vanilla. All right, so very, very similar in terms of the note breakdowns, you know, between Ighwa and YSL's Tuxedo. Now for Ighwa by Night, in the top notes, you have tobacco, pepper, and cinnamon. In the mid, you have nutmeg, tonka bean, and labdanum. And then in the base, you have vetiver, papyrus, and vanilla. Now for Harriet, the top notes of Harriet are going to be cinnamon and pepperwood. In the mid, you get tobacco leaf, incense, osmanthus, and labdanum. And then in the base, you get vanilla, iso-e super, cedar, musk, cypriol oil, and vetiver. So not too much difference, but there is, you know, some sort of difference there for sure. Now, in terms of just, I would say, overall quality, these two definitely are extremely good. Now, like I said, I still have to wait on my sample of Harriet to come in for me to really be able to say like how close this actually comes to Harriet. But this smells really good, man. It definitely, to me, performs the way that I remembered Harriet performing. So Harriet is not like the most super like loud or beast mode, you know, projecting tobacco type of scent. At least not like the post reformulation Parfum de Marly fragrance era. Like after a certain year, I don't remember exactly what year it was. I think it was like around that 2017 through 2019 ish sort of point in time. I think that's when they really started to kind of reformulate their fragrances and, really kind of water them down. So this definitely will smell, I think, like probably a newer batch of, Harrod, but it's a very just smooth. I would say this is a kind of more mature style scent, but definitely like not like old man sort of mature or anything like that. I think this is definitely more sort of like a 30 to 35 and up sort of scent. But man, this one just has a certain level of sort of class and elegance to it. And it's a very easy to wear tobacco scent, man. It has to me like the right amount of, sweetness, the right amount of spice, the right amount of almost kind of like earthiness as well. This is just I would say Harrod definitely is one of the best sort of, tobacco scents out there for sure. Especially if you're someone who's just trying to get into tobacco scents, I would absolutely recommend the Harrod DNA to someone like that wants to kind of get their feet wet in tobacco scents, but doesn't want something like super loud, like maybe red tobacco or, even something like mystery tobacco. Even though mystery tobacco, I think for me is probably one of the best, that fragrance is still on the stronger side, definitely stronger than something like Harrod. All right. So yeah, man, so far this one really, really does smell amazing. Obviously, like I said, I'll have to do a full review, in like a side-by-side comparison once I get my sample in of this. But so far, I'm very pleased with the way that Ighwa by Night smells. Performance-wise, so far, this has been like around that 6 hour mark or so. And, in terms of longevity, and then for like the projection, it is a kind of softer projecting scent. So I would say about a little bit more than a half an arm's length or so for like the first hour and a half. And then it gets even closer than that after that on skin. So, again, definitely not the strongest tobacco scent out there. Most tobacco scents are a lot more, louder than, what this one is. But this one, like I said, just has a certain sort of quality and elegance to it that, it's a really, really good scent, man. So Ighwa by Night. And then for the regular Ighwa, this is hands down, I would say, better than, the Tux for sure, as well as Suits. Now, I've always maintained that Suits, at least for me anyway, was the higher quality or better interpretation of YSL's Tuxedo. Even though the Tux is better to me in the initial opening than what Suits is, in terms of like how it recreates that sort of pepperiness that you get from Tuxedo. I feel like where Suits really shined was like in the dry down when you started to get that patchouli. The patchouli definitely smelled a lot more higher quality, in my opinion, in Suits than what it did in the Tux. It's there in the Tux, but to me, it's not as high quality smelling. It's not as prominent. And it's just not as good overall as what it smells like in Suits. Now, for Ighwa, and I mean, I'm also waiting on another sample of Tuxedo as well, because I've used that doing, testing with these other fragrances. But from what I can tell, this definitely smells even higher quality than what Suits does for sure. It definitely smells closer, in my opinion, in the opening for sure than what Suits does. Suits to me came off as a little bit more kind of like synthetic smelling, and also a little bit more almost kind of like fruitier, you could say, in the initial opening than what Tuxedo did. So I always maintain that this one was not as close in the initial opening, but as it dried down, it got, right there with Tuxedo. Whereas this one, straight from the start, I would say this definitely reminds me much more of what, Tuxedo smells like. And even when you compare it to something like Maison Alhambra's the Tux, you absolutely can smell that there is a noticeable quality difference between the way that Ighwa smells and the way that the Tux smells. And this does smell of lower quality, in my opinion, than what Ighwa does. Now, also, this, at least on my skin anyway, this pushes off of my skin better than the Maison Alhambra and the Fragrance World suits. So just overall, man, I would say this is, from what I can smell, the best interpretation of YSL's Tuxedo. Now, again, like I said, I'm waiting on my sample to come. I think it should be here by about Monday of next week. So we'll be doing kind of like a deep dive or like a full review of these two fragrances next week. But this, I would say, absolutely is going to be the best one, man. Obviously, like, I haven't smelled some of the other ones that, people like to kind of bring up, like, what is it? Mustache by Rochas or Rochas, however you pronounce it. And I haven't smelled like Tarathi Brown from Afnan, but I would say this would have to be the best one that I've smelled. Absolutely. So performance on this is also very solid, man. Just straight out of the box, like I said, the projection on this was very good, easily over an arm's length. Like, this really, really pushes off of me really good, man. And then in terms of, like how long that lasts, I would say easily like about an hour 45 to 2 hours. So really, really good projection on this. And then as far as like the overall longevity so far, I easily am getting over like 8 to 10 hours with this. So really, really good performance on this fragrance, man. I'm really, really happy with, how this smells and how it performs. And the price really on both of these from Fragrance Spy was nothing crazy at all. I mean, I believe both of these were like each around maybe $40 or so before shipping. So really, really good prices on these, man. So definitely check out Ighwa as well as Ighwa by Night. All right, so next what we have here is Soir. So like I said, this one is Fragrance World's newest interpretation of MFK's Grand Soir. So obviously, their other iteration of the fragrance was a part of their Bearcat line, and that was the Bearcat Ambre Eve or Amber Eve, however you pronounce it. And I mean, this one was it was a solid, interpretation of Grand Soir. Definitely wasn't exactly the same, at least from what I could tell. This one, you kind of got like that fizzy sort of ambery, touch that you get in Grand Soir initially. But then it was like after a couple of minutes, like this immediately started to turn like resinous and, more into like the vanilla aspects of the fragrance. And I mean, while I still enjoyed this fragrance, when you spray this side by side with the Bearcat, you're like blown away, or at least I was blown away at, how much better this actually smelled, than the Bearcat, to be honest with you. When I smell these two side by side, I picked up on like a lot more sort of alcohol, at least in the initial opening, from the Bearcat than what I did in the Soir, which is a little weird to me because it's like, I remember doing a comparison video, obviously, of, the Ambre Eve and, comparing that to Grand Soir. And I don't believe I really picked up on how much more alcohol was in the, the Bearcat. But yeah, man, the Soir just smells a lot more smoother and a lot more higher quality, to be honest. Now, the note breakdown on Soir compared to Grand Soir. With Soir, you're gonna get in the top notes lavender, mandarin, and pepper. In the mid, vanilla, sandalwood, and cedarwood. And then in the base, amber, labdanum, and patchouli. Now, for Grand Soir in the top notes, you get Spanish labdanum and orange. In the mid, you get lavender and siam benzoin. And then in the base, you get amber, vanilla, tonka bean, musk, and cedar. Now, I didn't even smell this side by side with the Bearcat. I had initially just went straight to smelling the side by side with Grand Soir. And I think really the only differences that I could really pick up on between this and, the original Grand Soir was it seemed like Grand Soir to me, it stayed a little bit fizzier, a little bit longer than what this did. So this still to me kind of went into like the sort of resinous sort of vanillic aspect of the fragrance a little bit sooner than what the Grand Soir did. But what I will say is the Soir from Fragrance World, at least from what I could pick up on, actually was performing better than what the original MFK was, without necessarily sacrificing any sort of quality. Obviously, like I said, I was getting that slight sort of difference where it seemed like this was going a little bit, resinous a little bit sooner, than the Grand Soir. But definitely I would say not to the level that the Bearcat does. So again, the Bearcat Amber Eve, this one kind of goes resinous and vanillic, like almost immediately after you spray it. Whereas this, I feel like it kind of took maybe about 20-ish minutes or so for it to go to that. Whereas Grand Soir, I would say maybe stays a little bit more fizzier for at least about 10 to 15 minutes longer on my skin. So, I mean, that was the main difference really that I noticed. And then, like I said, again, it was the extra sort of projection that I was getting from Soir. This definitely was noticeably better when it came to the projection, at least on my skin, than what Grand Soir was. And I mean, there were times where like I had Soir on this arm and then I had Grand Soir over here. And I was, even clearing my nose to make sure that, I wasn't going nose blind to either one of them. And it was times where I would kind of get up close and you could barely kind of tell that the Grand Soir was there. And this was, maybe after about an hour and a half or so. Whereas the Soir from Fragrance World was like noticeably stronger than what the Grand Soir was. And like I said, there wasn't really any kind of noticeable difference in quality where it was like the Soir was coming off as being screechier and that's why you could smell it more. That wasn't really the case from what I could tell on my skin. So Soir so far is very impressive. I would say, for the price, for it to come as close as what it has to, Grand Soir so far, that's really, really nice, man. I think the price point on this was definitely lower than the Ighwa fragrances from French Avenue. So I want to say this one might have been closer to like that kind of $25 to $30 mark or so on Fragrance Buy. Obviously, I'll have links in the description to where you can purchase all of these fragrances. But again, I was really, really impressed with, what I smelled from this fragrance. Obviously, I'll have to, kind of continue to wear this one and, also continue to wear it side by side with Grand Soir to really see, if there are any other differences that I pick up on. But at least first impressions, you know, as far as that goes, I would say this is definitely the best one that I've smelled. Now, obviously, I haven't smelled Alexandria's version, which has been out for like quite a long time. So I can't say if this is better than that. I know for most people, you know, that was like their go-to is Alexandria's version. I can't think of the name of it. But I would say, I mean, as close as what this comes to, you know, the original, I can't really imagine the Alexandria being much closer than this, to be honest with you. Maybe it's able to get the initial kind of opening down just slightly better. But I mean, for this to be 100 ml for around that $30 mark, whereas, you know, obviously 100 ml of the Alexandria is going to be over $100. This one to me just makes way more sense. All right. So far, man, like I said, really impressed with this one. You know, I'll have a full review on all three of these fragrances, you know, in the coming week or so. And definitely, man, let me know in the comments what you all think about Soir as well as two Ighwa fragrances, man. Let me know if you all have actually picked these up, and if so, what do you all think about these? Do you think that these are the best interpretations of, you know, the fragrances that they're inspired by? Also, I'll have links in the description to where you can pick these up. And if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Sense. I'll see you all in the next video.